about the desired workforce experience coming off the back of that, obviously we're looking at days are tough, but there is a desired workforce experience that should influence the user experience. And now I'd like to turn you back a little bit to the design of technology, but also to shape the other elements. I mean, it's not just about the tech, it's not just about the purpose, it's also elements like policies and people practices. How do they all come together to create, a great user experience in terms of workforce experience? I know it's a complicated question, lots of parts, but
thank you, Sally. Look, I must say, you're spot on, right? I think so many organizations focus on the user experience and focus on technology only. Now, that's a really important part, right? So, but before I think you get into unpacking how the parts come together, I think you've got to start with, first of all, what motivates and engages your workforce, right? What are the things that create sludge for them, right? What are those things? What is the drag on their day, right? And really, I think appreciating what those needs and frustrations are so that you can try and solve for them. So I think that's certainly one part. I think secondly, it's incredibly important to equally marry your client experience, your desired external client experience, with your employee experience. Where a lot has been written about CX and EX, but I'm a firm believer that that is such an important relationship, because in a world where, and I'm going to again use Nedbank as an example, we certainly have embarked on a huge digitization journey, and really wanting to be at the forefront of being a deliver digital solutions to our clients, because they are easy to engage with, simple, intuitive. You can engage with them 24/7. The reality is you cannot offer that to your client and then ask your employees to come back and say, well, can you please fill in these 15 forms? And you're going to repeat the same information 5 times over, or if they're 15 forms, 15 times over. And that's okay, because you're sending them conflicting messages. So it is really important, I believe, to tap into what are the ways of engaging and motivating your workforce and what frustrates them. Solve those. Secondly, what is your client experience looking to achieve, and how do you make sure that the internal employee lived experience is really a mirror of that? So yes, technology in our world is a hugely important part of our workforce experience. And again, if I think about technology, it's not technology for technology's sake, right? It is, you've really got to think about your process design, your process re-engineering, and that starts with your policy. So you are spot on. I mean, I'll give you some frightening examples, which we are solving, I'm happy to say. So I'm going to use some examples that maybe don't, certainly will demonstrate why we need to make some shifts in our practices. But in essence, if you had to, a few years ago, if you had to apply for leave at Nedbank, you would have had to know the difference between statutory leave and discretionary leave. Now, if you have to go in and ask an employee, even if it is an automated digitized process, to go in and determine what is, from a drop-down menu that is so complicated, how do I determine what the leave is that I'm actually applying for? They just want to go on vacation, right? So it's got to be made a whole lot simpler. And that starts, therefore, with the way you design your policies, right? You should never have a set of policies that are so complicated that you require an employee to take out a dictionary, have to walk around with the user manual so that they can comply with what is required. If you're talking simple, intuitive, and easy to engage with, so your policies need to be simple, intuitive, and easy to engage with, and they've got to make sense. They've got to achieve, they've got to be designed with outcomes in mind. So the outcome, the form that you touched on earlier, is so incredibly important that it matches the function. And so that's really something which I know sounds so simple in words, but it is actually quite difficult to achieve and requires a lot of re-engineering of people practices and processes in order to achieve it, right? So I think equally, if you think about this world that we live in our personal lives, we can do banking anywhere, anytime, right? You can lie in bed at night, do a transfer, pay somebody. A bad banking experience is when you want to go and talk to somebody in a branch because you've had to stand in a line, etc. The reality is you want to be able to deal with your needs digitally, and equally, if where you get stuck, you want to be able to pick up the phone and talk to somebody fairly immediately. You don't want to have to wait until the bank opens to us at a certain time to be able to go and get an issue resolved. And our people practices have got to be designed on the same principles. The reality is that our workforce is living in a world of, always on. So they need to be able to access their tools and the solutions that they need to engage with when they want to, not when we want them to. So the principle of 24/7 is very important. And then equally, the principle of designing for self-service, because again, if you just think about the simple examples of your iPhone, right? When you got an iPhone, it didn't come with a manual, right? You kind of figured it out. Why? Because it was simple, it was intuitive. So when you're designing your people processes, or any form of process that your employees engage with, it has to be intuitive. It has to be, they can't have to sit there with the manual to be able to determine what they have to do next, because that just, if you're doing that, it's first of all, it slows them down, and it's an element of frustration. So it really is about designing for function, making sure that what you're putting in front of your workforce is what they need in order to fulfill an outcome, and lead with those principles in mind. And that shapes everything from the way we engage and design our technology, the way we engage and design our policies, our people practices, pretty much any solution, really. It's incredibly important that those principles guide what we do, and you see the value proposition holistically, because you can design beautiful tech and tech for tech's sake, or you can design tech for function. And equally, policy, goes hand in hand with that. So just very important ingredients in workforce experience.